Dr. Sam Nujoma, Namibia's founding president, who will be joined by guests who knew him personally and professionally to share their insights and experiences. To begin with, we'll have the Executive Director of the Namibia Institute for Democracy, Naita Ishono, who will join us to discuss what Dr. Nujoma's passing means for Namibia and his influence on the country's democratic journey. Chef Jonah Levy, a renowned Namibian chef, will be joining us to share his experiences about cooking for the late Dr. Nujoma and memorable moments from serving the late president. Veteran press photographer Dirk Heinrich will also come in to talk about capturing historic moments of Dr. Nujoma's life through his lens. Veronica de Klerk, political analyst and women's rights advocate, will reflect on Dr. Nujoma's leadership and his lasting impact on Namibia. The Executive Director of Women's Action for Development, Shenendima Seattle, will join us to also highlight Dr. Nujoma's role in advancing women's rights and gender equality in Namibia. Zimbabwean Ambassador to Namibia, Melody Chaurura, will also join us to discuss the deep-rooted relationship between Namibia and Zimbabwe, reflecting on how moments of national mourning impact diplomatic ties and the future of bilateral relations. Stay with us as we honor Dr. Sam Nujoma's legacy through these conversations. Welcome back. Namibia and Zimbabwe share a deep history rooted in liberation struggles, regional solidarity, and economic cooperation. As Namibia mourns the passing of the founding president, we reflect on how this moment impacts our diplomatic ties and explore ways to strengthen bilateral relations moving forward. Today, we're honored to have the Zimbabwean ambassador to Namibia with us, Madam Chaurura, to talk to us about the enduring partnership between our two nations and the opportunities that lie ahead. Ambassador, very good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time to join us for this very important conversation pertaining to Brother and sister relations between Namibia and Zimbabwe. The context matters a lot in terms of where we come from as the two nations. How would you describe the relations now, and looking at the fact that we are reflecting on the legacy of the late president? How much of an impact was he in keeping those relations, establishing those relations initially, and also keep them going throughout Namibia's journey through the struggle and also post-independence?
Thank you very much, my dear brother, for this opportunity. And a good afternoon to your viewers. But first things first, I wish to convey Zimbabwe's condolences to the government and people of the Republic of Namibia following the passing of a gallant son of the soil, a revolutionary, a Pan-Africanist, a soldier, a brave man, whose impact on the liberation struggle in Africa can never be underestimated. So at a time like this, we deeply reflect on the journey that we have traveled as an African people, a journey that we have traveled as a region, as SADC, a journey we've traveled as an African people. It's a journey that has seen us endeavor to achieve the freedom and independence that should see us achieving our full developmental potential as a people. To go back to your question, my brother, to talk about the Zimbabwe-Namibia bilateral relationship, I should not forget to state that for us to be where we are today, it's a result of the deliberate effort by sons of the soil, like His Excellency, Dr. Nujoma, who devoted their lives to the freedom of our people. And today we celebrate a relationship that is cross-cutting. Namibia and Zimbabwe cooperate in a number of areas, be it manufacturing, in agriculture. Mining, education, security. In fact, let me say a cross-section of issues. And we are talking at a point where there has been a decision which was reached between the two countries in 2021 to elevate the cooperation between the two countries to a binational commission. And we are working towards the inaugural session of this binational commission, or as a result of the work, the groundwork that was done by the former president and the founding father of the Republic of Namibia. So if I'm going to talk about the work that he has put in terms of establishing relations between the two countries, then the two of us, my brother, might need maybe a full day.
Absolutely.
Because it did not come overnight. It did not come as a one-day wonder. Neither was it a straw in the park, but a result of consistent effort to achieve that which benefited, which benefits, and will continue to benefit the people of the two countries, and not only the two countries, but also SADC as a region, and also the African continent at large.
The late Nujoma also stood side by side with one of Africa's most towering figures in the form of the late Dr. Robert Mugabe. And I remember in 2002, they attended a conference. Both heads of states were there, and including the Prime Minister, then Prime Minister of the UK, Tony Blair. And it's when Dr. Mugabe stood up and made that historic quote where he told Blair, keep your England and let me keep my Zimbabwe. And it was also followed by another fiery speech by Dr. Sam Nujoma condemning the actions of, the Western nations on Zimbabwe and calling for the lifting of sanctions so that Zimbabwe can prosper economically. When you think about such moments, and this we're talking over more than 20 years ago, one can't wonder but think what drives an individual to speak with so much passion, against the injustices, even post independence, and also if you look at many of the speeches that were delivered by both gentlemen, they usually used to, they mostly used to talk about neocolonialism as well, that the fight was not yet over. There was another war that we had to take on in the form of economic emancipation. But what are your thoughts around this great gentlemen who you said, did things, took it upon themselves, dedicating a large chunk of their adult life in helping achieve independence? What do you think about, what goes into being such an individual?
Well, it speaks to the bravery of the former president and founding father of the Republic of Namibia. It speaks to his unapologetic nature about his convictions. He did not need to look at the audience to express his opinions. He did not need to consult the dictionary when it came to pronouncing what he firmly believed in. And I think that is one characteristic that is also linked to the former president of the Republic of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Robert Mugabe.
Yeah.
And when you look at those attributes, it is what makes us who we are today, where we look at ourselves and we do not fear to define issues the way they present themselves, where we don't need to always scan our surroundings to be able to define our priorities and to be able to take positions on issues that affect our countries, on issues that affect our people. I think it is that which I think we need to keep in mind and to continue firing as we continue with the battle. And you said it already, my brother, the battle is not over. The battle is not over, and we need to continue in the same spirit, with the same clarity, with the same dedication, with the same conviction, for us to be able to deliver the independence that our people so deserve. In as much as at the time we were fighting the apartheid regime, we were fighting a colonial oppression, we were fighting the brutality, now we are facing new giants.
True.
And these giants require the same bravery and the same conviction. I think that is what I could say regarding what was demonstrated in that conference.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy the video is so viral.
Yeah, it's circulating once again.
I don't think there's anyone who can claim to not have seen it. It had that impact then, and I'm sure it has the same impact even today, because Zimbabwe, as you know, is still fighting the heavy yoke of sanctions for daring to claim that which is rightfully it is.
The younger generation that's growing up now maybe have very few recollections about the great work and the brave actions that went into liberating our countries. What is your message to young people who are probably tuned in right now about the lessons that they can draw from the late Dr. Sam Nujoma in terms of moving the country forward?
I think the lessons to pick is unity. We need to unite against a common enemy. The common enemy at the time, like I said, was repression, colonialism, brutality, apartheid. We still need up to now to unite against the common enemy of our time. We need to be consistent about what we believe in. We need to refuse to be intimidated. Because when we reflect and even come across the literature of the struggle, it wasn't a straw in the park. It's here to take determination of all time, to be able to keep on the struggle, to be able to mobilize support, to be able to keep you people united, even in the thick of the struggle. So I think what I can talk to the generation of today is that it is not easy to attain our goals. It is not easy for us to push towards our mark, but surely it is achievable, especially if we take time to reflect on the journey that was traveled by the founding father of the Republic of Namibia.
Absolutely. Zimbabwe is considered Namibia's all-weather friend, and history is there to show that through our darkest moments, Zimbabwe stood by us, and also post-independence. Dr. Sam Nujoma was one of the many African leaders who were, when it was not popular to do so, to stand by Zimbabwe and say, no, we're not going to change our stance in terms of what is being done in Zimbabwe by the Western countries. Where did you think that conviction came from? I mean, you could have said, well, that's Zimbabwe's problems, let them handle it themselves. It has nothing to do with us. Talk to us about what you think of such actions, to say, look, this is my brother, this is my sister. Even if you have to cut me off, I will stand by Zimbabwe. What do you make of such a stance in terms of consistency and just saying, this is where I stand, whether you like it or not?
It comes from a realization that together we stand, divided we fall. A happy and prosperous Zimbabwe translates to a happy and prosperous Namibia, and vice versa. So that deep understanding that the struggles that Zimbabwe is going through are struggles that will and has an automatic impact on Namibia is something which is critical in terms of being able to attain the developmental aspirations of our people. So I think for me it comes from just that simple understanding that if we are to be prosperous, then it is important that we remain united, and if we are to be able to achieve the regional integration that we aspire to achieve, then we need to remain united, and there is no plan B. Yeah. The plan A is to be united, plan B is to be united, and plan Z is to be united.
Off camera, we had a brief conversation and where I said that Dr. Sam Nujoma is what many would consider the last of a dying breed. You cannot talk about African history without talking about Sam Nujoma. You cannot talk about the OAU without talking about Sam Nujoma. From a personal perspective, while growing up, what was your first, encounter about Sam Nujoma, if there was any, in terms of when you heard about him, this young man from Namibia? Who is he? Who is Sam Nujoma? What was your first encounter finding out about the founding president at that time when, we were still fighting for the liberation of this country?
Thank you very much for that question, my brother. My first impression, even from literature as we were going to school, was that he's a man who refused to be silenced. He's a man who refused to accept nothing but the best. He's a man who was unapologetic about his convictions. He's a man who believed in the total freedom of his people, meaning the people of the Republic of Namibia, and also the progress and prosperity, not only of Namibia, but also of the region. And this is well exemplified if you look at how Namibia was able to, give a dry port not only to Zimbabwe, but also to Zambia and also to Botswana. Well, yes. And this was very clear that the vision was to be able to expedite regional integration and to be able to expedite economic development across the region, all in pursuit of the developmental goals of the SADC region. We are aware of the SADC Vision 2050. And that can only be achieved if such mindset remains alive in our leaders. So I think I can say a lot about what came to my mind when I I went through the literature that made reference to President Nujoma, and it's a name that one would not wonder about. You already could know what it stands for. So I have a lot to say, but for the sake of time, I can end here.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the sake of time, a message of solidarity from the people of Zimbabwe to the Namibian brothers and sisters.
The message is, my brothers and sisters, we hear your cries. We see your tears, especially taking into account this is coming just 1 year after the passing of the former president and the third president of the Republic of Namibia, His Excellency Dr. Hage Geingob. May he so rest in peace. Your cries are Zimbabwe's cries. Your tears are Zimbabwe's tears. The message is, let us take up the spears and continue with the fight. Let us defend the unity that he stood for, he fought for, he sacrificed for. Let us defend the solidarity that he stood for. The solidarity between our two countries, between ourselves as a region in SADC, and also at a continental level in the African continent. Let us be unapologetic, my dear brothers and sisters, about what we believe in. Because if we continue with this legacy, we will be able to achieve the fully developed Namibia that we aspire, the vision 2030 of Namibia, which has been clearly set out. We will be able to achieve the Zimbabwe's vision 2030 that you are also aware of. We will be able to achieve the SADC vision 2050. We will be able to achieve the African Union vision 2063. So, my brothers, my sisters in Namibia, let us remain united. Let us keep moving. It is not going to be easy, but surely based on what we have learned from the late founding father, it is achievable. In Namibia, this is also happening at a time that Namibia is just elected, lady president, president-elect, His Excellency Netumbo Ndaitwa. And my message is, let us continue to rally behind and make sure that we do not betray the struggle. We do not let down the spirit of our forefathers who sacrificed their blood for us to be who we are today. And I always like the stance which is in the Namibian national anthem to say, their blood waters our freedom. Let that blood not be in vain. And that challenge is on us to make sure that the blood that waters our freedom, the blood of the founding father of the Republic of Namibia, doesn't, the sacrifices that he made do not go in vain.
Right. Ambassador Chaurura, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for that heartfelt message of solidarity from the people of Zimbabwe to Namibian brothers and sisters. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
All right. That was Zimbabwe's ambassador to Namibia, Melody Chaurura, speaking to us about the life and times of the late Dr. Sam Nujoma, the founding president of Namibia, and also just touching on the rich bilateral relations between the two nations and how we should continue side by side in developing them where others have left off. Stay tuned for more conversations.
My name is Naim Gorlick, and I'm here today as the representative and the president of the Windhoek Hebrew congregation in the Jewish community living in Namibia. Oh, he was a very great man, and I think he bestowed a tremendous amount of qualities and leadership into Namibia. I think for me, one of the outstanding issues was his vision and his guidance on leading Namibia from pre-independence to post-independence. And he was able to bring the people of Namibia together to move forward in that regard. And I think that was a very strategic move, a visionary move, but also he was very, very firm in how he felt things must be done, and he was able to take people with him in order to achieve what he was setting out to do. Dr. Nujoma was very straightforward. He came across as a spiritual man, and I think a lot of his values and a lot of his judgment was based on his spirituality. And a lot of the plans of changing Namibia to what it is today was because of that inherent spirituality that he had. Well, of course, he was a wise man, a very important man, and he will be greatly missed in Namibia. I think he stepped out of frontline politics. After his presidency, he was always still involved, and one knew that he was still involved in the way the country was moving. But he did it with humility, and I think he never lost sight of how he felt from day one about Namibia and where Namibia and its people should go. And I think that is the vision that I hope Namibia embodies in the future and through the memory of Dr. Nujoma. May his great name grow exalted and sanctified in the world that he created as he willed. May he give reign to his kingship in your lifetimes and in your days, and in the lifetimes of the entire family of Israel, swiftly and soon. May his great name be blessed forever and ever. May his great name be blessed forever and ever. Blessed, praised, glorified, exalted, extolled, mighty, upraised and lauded be the name of the Holy One, blessed be he. Beyond any blessing and song, praise and consolation that are uttered in the world, now respond and say Amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven and life upon us and upon Israel. He who makes peace in his heights, may he take peace upon us and upon Israel, and say Amen.
Welcome back. Namibia mourns the loss of its founding president, Sam Safashuna Nujoma, who passed away on the 8th of February this year. Nujoma's legacy is one of resilience, vision, and leadership. From his role as the face of Namibia's liberation struggle to his presidency from 1990 to 2005, his influence extended across politics, governance, and nation building. But what does his passing mean for Namibia today? Naita Ishono, the executive director of the Namibia Institute for Democracy, now joins us for more details on this. Very good afternoon to you, Naita, and thank you so much for making time to join us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having our institution here.
Much obliged. I think first things first, your impression of Dr. Sam Shafishuna Nujoma, which I believe you were able to meet in his prime. What are your thoughts on him leaving us now, and also his impact that he had on shaping democracy in this country?
We have history. My family, the people I grew up with. I was fortunate enough to be taken to safety. I was born in Angola. I grew up in Zambia, and the refugee camps for Namibians were organized under the leadership of our late president, of our founding father. He made sure that Namibians who left the country in the late 60s and 70s were taken care of outside, were taken care of in Tanzania, were taken care of in Angola, were taken care of in Zambia, in Nyango, where I was as well for a while. And after the Kasinga massacre on the 4th of May, 1978, that's when the ruling party and under the leadership of the president reached out to the international solidarity and asked to take in Namibians into safety. And I was taken then with 79 other kids to East Germany. Wow. I grew up in East Germany from the age of 3 until 1979. And I mean, from 1979 until 1990. And while we were in East Germany, the founding father visited us. So every year he visited us once to ensure we are safe, we are being educated, we are not losing touch with home, we are not forgetting that we are Namibians and that we are supposed to remember that one day we're going to go back. We're going to ensure that Namibia becomes independent and that Namibia becomes a country where there's solidarity, freedom, and justice and fairness for all, where we have education for all. So for me, it's very personal. It's very much like he's the reason I grew up safely, not just myself, but many other Namibians as well. He's the reason many Namibians enjoyed a good education. He's the reason that we have this constitution today. That's why our founding president is the one in front of the National Museum, for the Independence Museum, with the Constitution. With the Constitution. We removed that horse. That is history. And our president was set up there, our founding father, the founding president of Namibia, with a Constitution. And while many of us grew up safely, educated, very much aware of that Namibia will become free one day, Namibia will become independent, and when Namibia becomes independent, we'll create a society that's reflected now in our Constitution. So for me personally, it's not just about him being the founding father of the Constitution and of Namibia, but also he ensured that Namibians were safe, Namibians were educated, and Namibians are now sitting in the administration governing this country. Yeah.
Talking about governance, one wonders why we went with the democratic model, seeing that, historically we were supported by countries that were considered, the communist countries, the likes of Cuba, the likes of China. Why did we choose democracy, and how, through Tate Sam's eyes, why did he not decide to say, look, we're going to be, because there was that fear, especially from the other side, that Swapo was already considered as a communist terrorist organization, and when they come into power, this is what is going to happen. But it panned out differently, and Namibia is considered as one of the most stable democracies, not only on the continent, but in the world. Why was it important for us to choose the democratic path, while there were other alternatives as well? And what was Tate Sam's view on that at that time?
The different liberation movements in Africa and Namibia were always reaching out for assistance to, or when they reached out for assistance, they didn't reach out to say, we want to be assisted by the West or the East. They wanted to be assisted out of human rights, for improvement of human rights. Because Namibia was a German colony, Namibia was under apartheid, and we didn't go and choose and exile who's going to help us. The ruling party and the founding father and different people reached out to the international community, and whoever answered the call, answered the call. And the call that was answered was the call from, or Cuba answered the call, East Germany answered the call, but also Finland, also Solidarity Movement in West Germany, in England. And it wasn't about we are choosing a particular system. It is about who is there to help us. Because this is also the reason why President Lumumba was killed. He was told that, oh, you're aligning yourself with the Russians. You're aligning yourself with whom and with whom. But President Lumumba had asked for assistance everywhere, and he didn't receive that assistance. And when he received the assistance from Russia, those interest groups saw a reason to kill him. This is the same with other liberation movement. It wasn't like that you choose to be this or that. You chose, we didn't choose who will help us. We asked for general assistance, and the assistance that we received was from certain countries. But it was used as a propaganda mechanism during apartheid to say Swapo is communist, or MPLA or FAPLA or Frelimo and other parties where this. It wasn't about that. People didn't go and choose what. People got assistance from certain political parties. And the slogans under which I grew up was solidarity, freedom, and justice. It was to receive solidarity and to be a solidaric country, to receive the freedom and to be a just society. So when you want to establish a just society, then democracy is one of those ways where you can create a just society. That's why I'm also holding up the Constitution. The Constitution's mothers and fathers, they came together and said, let's have a society that's equal. What also happened geopolitically at that time was that in 1989, Europe changed, the wall fell. And with the falling of the wall, there was also then the toppling of communistic countries. And that also led to this fear of South Africa always portraying that, oh, the communist domino effect will take place in Africa like it did in Asia. That fear was taken with the fall of the wall. And with the fall of the wall, you could see that the world is changing geopolitically. And that also led to the speeding up of Namibia's independence process. There were lots of things that happened, but what is important to understand, we need to learn our history so that we understand what happened during that time, so that we understand why we chose democracy, and so that we understand how larger occurrences worldwide led to us deciding we're going to be a democratic country. Because with the toppling of communism in Europe, you could see that Namibia decided, let us be a country where we embrace the values of a democratic society.
Nujoma was considered as a very decisive individual when it came to, critical situations, and some may criticize that his style of leadership was a bit, authoritarian, despite the fact that it's a democracy. But in your view, do you think that that's the type of leader that Namibia needed at that time in its infancy as a democracy? Retrospectively speaking, I mean, democracy was still independence was still very fragile at that time. We haven't yet received, the negotiations were still going on with South Africa, for example, in terms of us getting Walvis Bay back and reintegrating it into Namibia. But it's style of leadership. And then you also have democracy where people feel like everybody has to have a say. Does there come a point where democracy sometimes is be like, hey, just sit down for a bit, so that, a decision can be made, so we move forward?
You know what? In Namibia, we have 3 branches of government. We have the executive, which is the president and his or her cabinet and the ministers under that. We have the legislature, which is the 2 houses of parliament, National Assembly and National Council. And then we have the judiciary with the courts, the Supreme Court, the magistrate courts, the High Court, and traditional courts. So governance in Namibia is not about one person. It's not about the president alone or the founding father alone. And democracy and independence, it was a group act. I always like to bring everybody to the table, because Namibia's independence, our founding president, he gave directions within the political party, within the struggle. He was supported by people from different groups in Namibia, from different cultural groups in Namibia. And when the Constituent Assembly met, they said, let us have 3 branches so that we have the separation of power. It was very important. And so far, no president in Namibia has abused their presidential power or their executive powers. So talking about styles of leadership, of course we have different styles of leadership, but the leadership of President Nujoma, it wasn't just about him. He was a very decisive person, but he was always guided by what the political party around him, by the needs of the people around him, by the needs of the people in exile, by the needs of the people here in the country, by the needs of then when we met as a constituent assembly, what did Namibia need? What is geopolitically now the trend? Because there were times when we, for instance, talk about the land question. The land question up to today is not resolved in such a way that you say, all right, we have a economic situation where where we have fairness. We are still working on that. We have political freedom, but not economic emancipation. And when it comes to leadership and when it comes to governance, we must always understand we have institutions, we have procedures, we have processes, which also late President Hage Geingob always amplified and specified, that let's work as a team, let's work as a country, let's work with the structures that are there.
All right, brilliant. Later, unfortunately, we've run out of time for this discussion, but I think in the coming days we will still be touching base and talking about the different facets of the late president. Thank you so much for providing insights on this facet of his life as a statesman, and also knowing him in a personal capacity as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, and now we'll quickly cross over to Studio 1 for the news highlights.
The Namibian Broadcasting Corporation, NBC, digital, television, and radio platforms brings you comprehensive coverage on all proceedings and special live broadcasts following the passing of founding president and father of the Namibian nation, Dr. Sam Nujoma. We remain committed to bringing you around-the-clock updates of all proceedings and programming on the life and times of our fallen hero until the burial, as the nation mourns the loss of an iconic and historic figure. May his legacy live on forever. NBC, it's ours.
Good afternoon. I'm Surya Gaumas with the 4 o'clock news highlights on NBC. Swapo Party Vice President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah says the party is at crossroads following the passing of Dr. Sam Nujoma. Nujoma's death has placed a daunting task ahead of the ruling party, she said. Swapo Party Extraordinary Central Committee meeting at the weekend, Nandi-Ndaitwah implored party cadres to put their differences aside, unite and stand up for the party and the country. Nandi-Ndaitwah reminded party members that this year is also an election year. She said the party lost 12 seats after the National Assembly elections last year, adding that this was a serious matter that warrants a critical self-examination. She called for a deep introspection and encouraged party members to aggressively prepare for this year's local authority and regional council elections. Nandi-Ndaitwah said the leadership across all levels must focus on selecting capable, committed and visionary leaders who understand the needs of the people and who will work tirelessly to improve the lives of the communities. Chairperson of the Oshokavare Council under the Vita Royal House in Kunene region has added his voice to the choir of tributes that have followed the death of Namibia's founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma.
The big man fought for this country. He went abroad. Even those who were cursing him, especially the South African Boers when they attacked Kasinga, they were saying they've broken the backbone of Swapo. That man fought and he never gave up. He never looked back. He just moved forward till he liberated the land. When he freed this land, he did it peacefully. And it has been peaceful up to date. And he left it in peace. The peace he fought for reigns on, unlike other African countries like Congo. When Patrick Lumumba died, the war started and going on even to today. When Angola got its independence in 1975, the war started. And other countries like Mozambique, Sudan and other countries I can't mention. Our God-given leader who got the wisdom stick that gave him luck and repatriated all Namibians in exile. Since then, Namibian people have been living in peace despite the different political parties and the country being in chaos. He has fulfilled his God-given mission on earth and he must go rest in peace, but his spirit must watch over his people.
Veteran media personality Lamek Monyangapo was one of Dr. Sam Nujoma's assigned camera operators during and after his presidency, accompanying Nujoma on both international and continental trips over that time. He shared some of his recollections of his time spent with the founding president and lessons learned from the liberation icon. Let's listen in.
Father of the Namibian nation, that is Dr. Sam Nujoma, as you were assigned as his camera operator.
Dr. Nujoma is the founding president of our republic. That was in the early 90s. Now, everything is new in terms of a person like me from the black society to come in the center of what we call the State House, where the government sits. It is where we started. Particularly, there were a group, those who are a little bit in front of me, the Nora Apollos, the late George Shikongo, and the Charles Mbita. I joined him on the 1993. Yes, we start here at home, particularly when we have the Curtis Call at the State House. We have the events, some are national events, and we also covering the cabinet where a lot of decisions were taken. It is how we start growing up. But we didn't stop there. We end up taking the trips outside of Windhoek, going to the coast and going to the region by that time. Amazing. And that is how we start.
All right. Yeah. Kindly just share some of the memorable moments you've shared with the late founding president, perhaps in Namibia or also on the international trips that you took.
Well, Tate Nujoma, I think he was a visionary leader. I can start here at home. You know, he came to talk about education and training. That was the most important subject that he loves. Wherever he talked, he underlined the education and training because he looked the background where we come from. Most of us, we didn't get opportunity to go for training and educated ourselves. Either those have been abroad and those have been in the country. You go up to grade 10, then you can be a nurse or a teacher. But he was looking most importantly to the science area. Then he talked about geology, because to him, he studied what the natural resources this country have possessed. Now, without training, it will be difficult to explore the resources you have. You rely on the foreigners. To him, that was not going well. Therefore, he was said, comrade, let us emphasize education and training. That's why in 1990, there was not a university here. It was his effort to make sure that the University of Namibia had been established. But that is the body. Now, out of that body, the faculty that can address his idea need to be established. Now you have the geology department. You have the School of Medicine here at this Hage Geingob campus. You have engineering campus that they named after Dr. Eduardo Santos in Ongwediva. And of course, you have the marine campus, which is in the Hendes Bay. These are the areas that he normally talks. To me, when he's talking, you don't know what the future tells. In Oshuambu, he said, Kuno mehoyonwa. He looked very far than you, you know? And then you look to the food security that he talked about. Immediately after he tell everybody about the food security, we see the green scheme was established. Go to what is in the Tunde Nomsati region. Go to Kavango region, there are a green scheme. Even beyond, go to Katprivi, what we call the basin now. We never know in this country if we can grow rice, but they are there. There he is. He's telling you, comrade, you cannot lead the nation when it's hungry. But we can also not import food. We must produce our own food. That is Nujoma that I know.
All right. Mr. Munyangapo.
A full bench of High Court judges will hear the case of cannabis activist Brian Jafta, who is seeking the legalization of dacha in Namibia. The matter, initially scheduled for a status hearing, was postponed by High Court Judge Aileen Rakau to July the 2nd. In a new development, the state has requested the case be put on hold until the Law Reform and Development Commission finalizes its report on the legal recommendations of cannabis use. The state hopes the report's recommendations will reflect the moral standards, aspirations and values of the Namibian people regarding cannabis use. Jafta, an avid advocate for cannabis, argues that the plant holds religious offences or religious-related issues it's the religious significance, Among a myriad of other requests, he is also seeking a court order for the release of people currently imprisoned for cannabis-related offences, and Jafta has another ongoing legal battle after authorities at the Windhoek Correctional Facility cut his dreadlocks without his permission. Moving on to other news now, and following significant battlefield successes, including regaining control of large parts of the capital and surrounding regions from the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, the Sudanese Army Chief has announced plans to establish a caretaker government to guide the country through its conflict. CGTN has more.
The Sudanese army has secured key battlefield victories in recent months, and the country's top military commander, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is now proposing a roadmap to a new government. The soon-to-be-formed administration, described as a caretaker or wartime government, will play a crucial role in restoring essential services to areas devastated by war. According to the Sudanese Army commander, who is also the chairman of the ruling Transitional Sovereign Council, the new administration will be made up of independent experts. Its more immediate objective would be to help accomplish the remaining military tasks.
The deepening crisis in Eastern DRC has one of the top issues discussed at the African Union's annual summit. Leaders from across the continent gathered for the event in Ethiopia's capital, but the DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi did not attend. Al Jazeera reports.
African leaders had a lot of topics to discuss. The conflict in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo topped the agenda.
We are all very, very concerned about an open regional war in over Eastern DRC. And this, we reiterated the need for caution and the need for M23 and its supporters to disarm and withdraw from the Goma airport and other occupied territories.
Leaders called for humanitarian and trade routes to remain open and what some of them call uninvited countries supporting the M23 rebel group to leave the DRC. Two peace processes will be merged into one. The Luanda process tried to get the presidents of DRC and Rwanda to talk face to face. Then there is the Nairobi peace process.
In very basic terms, the Nairobi process is supposed to bring the different factions inside DRC to a negotiating table so that they can have a conversation with their government, which is the government of DRC. Okay. And this includes the M23.
But DRC's president, who did not attend the summit, has previously said he will not talk to M23.
Well, that concludes the news highlights at this hour. Stay tuned for the special broadcast in memory of the founding president. Goodbye for now.
Welcome back, and we continue to reflect on the life and times of the late Dr. Sam Shapishuna Nujoma, the founding president of the Republic of Namibia. We're honored to be speaking to Dirk Heinrich, a veteran press photographer who spent years behind the lens capturing some of Namibia's most historic moments. During his time with the Allgemeine Zeitung, Derek had the rare privilege of photographing Namibia's founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma, countless times, preserving visual records of a leader whose legacy continues to shape the nation. As we reflect on Dr. Nujoma's life following his passing on February 8th, Derek joins us in studio to share his experiences from behind the camera and what it was like documenting history in real time, the moments that stood out the most, and his personal encounters with the late president. Derek, thank you so much for making time to join us.
It's a pleasure.
I think, perfect start to this conversation would be to get your impression of the passing of the late. Where were you when you got the news, and, how did you, process it?
I was actually at home, and somehow one was expecting it with the news we had, him being hospitalized and in his conditions in the month before. But as we humans are, we always push it away. You think things are forever, and once it happens, you are still shocked. And then you start thinking back, and what happened, and where did you meet the person, and what were the highlights, and there could even be some other situations. And I think this is an important thing we should do. We must remember things, while looking forward into the future, and knowing that some things will happen with all of us. We must remember what has happened, and we must try and evaluate it and think of the good things, the exciting things, even sometimes some bad things. But to remember is a very good thing, and to suddenly sit down and feel sorry won't help you, won't help history, and won't help you to come over the loss. But I think if you look back and you see all the nice things, the happy things, the positive things you actually had with that person, and what he did and what he didn't do. I mean, there's always two sides.
Yes.
This makes it easier and brings back a memory which you can share with others, which I eventually did.
Yeah. Last week I spoke to an older gentleman, an Afrikaner, Afrikaans-speaking gentleman, and I was always been very curious about finding out what the conversation was around, Sam Nujoma, before independence in the Afrikaner community. And luckily enough, he did meet him, and versus what they were told about, the liberation icon. They created almost they made him a boogeyman, so to say. And when he finally met Dr. Sam Nujoma and they sat and had a conversation, he had to go back and say, but this wasn't the case. I would like to find out, what was the conversation before independence in the German-speaking community around Dr. Sam Nujoma versus what you had about him, and when you finally got to meet him face to face?
Well, it's always like that. I mean, that you have got a different picture in your head when you hear something about a person or even just heard his voice. I mean, if a person phones you for the first time and you hear the voice, you've got a picture of that person, And if you may be being told that person will call you, you think, okay, I've got a little bit of information, but it's most of the time, let's call it one-sided information. We were here in the country, we German-speaking Namibians, and we couldn't get the chance. In my job, I think I did a lot of things different to a lot of my colleagues. I didn't want to be on this side, and I didn't want to be on this side. I saw myself standing behind the wall, looking over it, and recording what is there. And I think I did a pretty good job, because if I see how people in Swapo trusted and mistrusted me, and see how people on the other side with the police and the army trusted and mistrusted me, I think I did a good job. Because if only one side would have trusted me and the other side not, I think I wouldn't have been a neutral journalist or photographer, which I wanted to be.
Absolutely.
And then you heard certain things about the late president. And you had a picture in your head, but this was from one side. And I was pretty disappointed when, I can't remember what year it was, when a bunch of journalists and photographers from here went over to Zambia to meet him. And I was only able to photograph them in the plane, and then I had to move out and they flew off. But one picture, which I still remember very well, and which fascinated me, was old Engelbrecht from the Republican. He sat next to Sam Nujoma and he pulled his beard. And that photograph was published. And I thought, gee, you know, when everybody talks about the terrorist and the man who just in a uniform and just shooting, and then he can joke around with Afrikaans speaking after you mentioned it. And this one, I was jealous that I didn't have taken that photograph. I must admit, I can't remember who took the photograph, but this is a picture which is still in my head. And then you start looking at things differently. But you still wondered how that person is like when you meet him for the first time.
Yeah.
And when I eventually met him, this is when he arrived here in the country. I was at the airport. I was just a few meters away from the steps where he came down. And you thought, okay, this is now the moment where you see him, where you're going to meet him.
Yeah.
But then immediately I had to switch onto one eye. Meaning I had to get up my camera and take photographs.
Yeah.
And in those days, I always had two cameras with me, one for taking black and white, and the other one was taking color slides. So I just concentrated on that. I wanted to get as many photographs as possible of that moment. And then you actually put that wall in between. This is where it comes when I say I had a wall over which I looked, or through which I looked. So you become professional and you put emotions and everything aside, which you have to, because otherwise you can't do a good job. And I think the photographs I got there, this is history now, and people are pretty excited to see what I've taken. Plus all the things which happened around, the hundreds of people which were outside the airport area and tried to get in and weren't allowed to. And late Hage, he still tried to get some people in, which had to be, and I still got photographs of that where he was standing with the then Southwest African police in that grey uniform they had in those days, trying to get things done, and they worked together, and everything around was actually pretty exciting. And then later, when we were in Windhoek and we were somewhere in Katatura, I only heard the other day now after somebody commented on one of my photographs that it was somewhere in Manahela. I sat like 2 meters from Sam Nujoma, and I had a chance to just leave the camera down and look at him.
Yeah.
And this is the first time we two actually had eye contact. And I could see there's this bit of mistrust, who is he, who was these people here, and especially the people around him, the security guys, they didn't trust us at all. And that went on for quite a long time. But it was still exciting. It was something new. It was something which changed your view. It changed the way you started working. And then for many years, I photographed him and saw him. And eventually we respected each other. We greeted each other when he saw that. And even the last time when he was, I still remembered it was at the old State House, when he said, now goodbye then, because somebody else is going to take over the position. He said to me, we've never been photographed together. Give your camera to one of the guys and take a photograph. And I thought, wow. This is something exciting.
Yeah. Now you're a photographer at the height of the conflict as well in this country. How dangerous was it, or what did you have to do? Or what's that one thing? Let me put it this way: what's that one thing that you did that you look at? It's like, I would have been dead by now had
We actually never thought of that.
Yeah.
You know, you went into situations and, well, you wanted to do a good job because you had a job to do and you wanted to get the best out of it. I never had the chance to go and meet the other side, which I would have done too. Because as I said, I saw myself as a neutral person trying to get the news out, showing our readers what's it all about. You know, when the local stuff here, and just quickly coming back to your question, I can't remember one thing dangerous because you didn't think. Maybe if one really goes into a lot of situations now, people will say, gee, Heinrich, you've been hell of a stupid, or you were brave, or but we never, you don't think about these things.
Yeah.
And that's why I won't be able to answer the question. But if we take, for example, in Kalatura, when there were Swapo meetings and things like that, because people were thinking about me, as I explained right in the beginning, you know, but there were people on that side who trusted me and others mistrusted me, you know. I was permanently in the tear gas. My standard equipment in my camera bag when I went to a meeting there was a lemon. Because when the tear gas came, you just took that lemon, you bit into it so it doesn't affect your throat and things like that. So I was, you know, part of the crowd and part of the people who suffered. But on the other side, then I could go after that to the other side and ask, okay, what was the purpose of that? And who was arrested and these type of things? And I got my information. And then you said, okay, you forgot about the tear gas and the lemon. It's unpleasant. It's not nice, especially if you're a photographer, or to try and take a photograph when your eyes are full of tears.
Yeah, true.
And not because you're crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was part of your job.
Absolutely. You know? Before we wrap up this conversation, I think, you know, you spoke about, you know, the mistrust, and for obvious reasons at that time, the climate that we're in as a country. But what was that defining moment when you won over the trust of, you know, of his security detail and also the man himself? What was that defining moment where you realized now that I've you know, overcome that obstacle now? I can do my job knowing that I have been recognized as somebody who does it without fear or favor.
Well, it wasn't from the late President of Founding Fathers' side, because he didn't let me feel it. I mean, and I can't remember when it was the first time when he saw me again standing there behind my camera, and most probably only knew me with one eye for many years. But when he greeted for the first time, you know, and then later coming towards me. But also the guys around him, they eventually realized this guy is just doing his job, even if he's a bit pushy, and I was pushy, I must admit. Then they started trusting more people which were around. And suddenly they realized that not everybody around is a potential enemy, you know, especially from the media and things like that. We have to be there, and we are a bit pushy, and we don't like if a person stands in front of you. And it slowly but surely eased off. And then sometimes again, you had somebody, you know, try to push his weight and then pushed you back and things like that. But it was a process. But I think we could have overcome as a country this more if we would have started talking to each other a lot more. And we still don't talk to each other enough.
Dirk, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing those very personal details about, you know, encounters with the late founding president, and also, you know, how you saw him as a human being who wanted the best for everyone in this country. And also thank you for telling us, you know, stories through the lens. Highly appreciated.
Just one last word, if I may.
Yes, sir.
One thing we Namibians must realize, once elections are over, it's not party anymore. You know, no matter for whom you voted, but it's your president. Sam Nujoma was my president, as was Pohamba and Yanko. I'm a Namibian, and if the majority decides he is the winner of the elections, then he is my president. If I voted for him or not, it doesn't matter, because then we're all Namibians again. And this is why we should stand together, play together. It's like a soccer team, you know. You can't say, okay, the captain of the team, no, I don't like him. I'm a fullback, but he's not my captain.
Yeah. Setting our differences aside.
We only got this country.
Absolutely. Dirk, thank you once again.
Pleasure.
All right, much appreciated. That was Dirk Heinrich, a veteran press photographer, sharing his memories and some anecdotes as well regarding the late founding president, Dr. Sam Nujoma. We'll be continuing with more conversations on reflecting the life and times of the late president. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In tribute to the late founding president of Namibia, Sam Nujoma, who was hailed as a pioneer for women's rights and gender equality, reflect on the significant role he played in shaping Namibia's progressive policies. His leadership not only advanced gender equality during the liberation struggle, but also led the foundation for post-independence policies to empower women in politics, education, and the workforce. To shed light on his enduring legacy, we are joined by Chinedima Salachel, the Executive Director of Women's Action for Development, or WAD, Executive Director of the Women's Action for Development, a key organization that continues to champion women's social, economic, and political empowerment in Namibia. Salachel, very good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time to join us.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us.
Much obliged. Your impression of the late founding president. Talk to us about that to kickstart off this conversation.
Yes, first I would really like to express our, heartfelt condolences to the passing of the founding father, a pioneer of gender equality in the country. For those who were there at the time when Namibia got independence, coming out of a war situation and looking at the laws and policies that were there at the time and reforming them, and women's economic empowerment, women's empowerment, gender equality to become one of those policies. This could have just come from a position of consideration, understanding, and I think this is what defines the founding father. We have seen in many countries in Africa, this was not the case. But for us in Namibia, we even few years after independence, we had a ministry specifically created for women's affairs. And it was in his office, in the office of the president. So that shows the importance that he has given to women empowerment and participation in governance. Yes.
Women empowerment, even to this day, is quite a controversial and touchy issue when you talk about it. There are men who feel that women are being over-empowered. And now imagine the late founding president was taking these bold steps in the 90s when the conversation around women empowerment, what a woman's place in society is, that still persists to this day, where some people feel that a woman ought to be in the kitchen, ought to be this and that, to conform to the African traditions and whatnot. What was the rationale behind him? Why did he make it a point to say, look, we need to empower, and not only empower women, but protect them as well? And how has it shaped the work that you do?
Yes. One rationale that I could think of is that, you see, a government makes decisions. And those decisions affect both men and women. And it is just fair enough to have the views and opinions and the life experience of both men and women. And you can only have that when you have both of them on the table, expressing their own views and opinions on policies, government policies and laws that are coming. Because at the end of the day, these laws and policies will affect them in one way or the other. I think that was the consideration there. It also came at the time when we got independence. Remember, 1994 was the Beijing platform. Came at the time when women empowerment was top on the international development agenda. And Namibia, as a country, is one of those few countries in Africa that actually followed suit with international development agenda. And we have so far done very well when it comes to gender equality. I think we have done well to a point where the representation of both men and women in our two houses of parliament, especially in the National Assembly, is high, even though in the National Council is still low. And to a point where we have seen many senior leadership positions taken up by women. And even policies and procedures, government policies, you will see that some of them give preference and priority to women just to meet that gap. And this all come from his time.
Yeah.
That's the kind of leader that we are talking about when it comes to gender equality.
Yeah. You know, when you look at us democratically, Namibia is essentially, still a baby, second last born of Africa. We used to be the last born, and then South Sudan, of course, was also created. When you look at some of the oldest democracies in the world, and America in particular, which has never seen a female president, as a matter of fact, the vice presidency position was only held by a woman in the form of Kamala Harris, despite the fact that it's over 250 years old, the American democracy. What do you think has influenced, us to, in other African countries as well? We've seen Malawi also have female president. We've seen Liberia have a female president, but the so-called leaders of democracy still are not ready for a woman in that top job. What has influenced, our philosophy in terms of understanding that women ought to be also, afforded that opportunity to lead?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the entire international community is still dominated by patriarchy. And that's why, some of the countries that you're talking about still, do not have confidence in women taking up that high office position. But for us, I think with time from independence, we somehow accepted that a woman can be a leader. And part of that acceptance came from the conditioning and the conducive environment that has been created by the leadership. So it requires leadership, it requires influence, and it requires changing people's minds on remember, we are an African society.
Absolutely.
And with African beliefs and traditions, a man should be there. He should be the leader.
The head of the house.
Yeah, but I think over the years we have somehow accepted that women can also become leaders. Therefore, we are moving towards that path of having our first female president. Something that many African countries that got their independence many years and between, embracing our culture and embracing modernity. And I think he played a very influential role there to say, yes, we do have these laws, we do embrace, these modern laws that we have, but we also have a culture that we subscribe to. So what I like about his involvement in that is that anything that violates the Constitution should not be followed by any cultural practices. And if you look at how this Olufuko matter was handled, it was all in line with the Constitution, or it is all in line with the Constitution. And this is what we need to do, I think, as Africans, that whatever violates the Constitution, we should either amend it in terms of our African cultural practices or laws or norms. We either amend it, and if it's not for the benefit of society, we replace it with whatever is good for society. I think we don't promote getting rid of culture at all. But what we say is that the Constitution is the supreme law of the country, and our culture should be within that framework. Our cultural practices, norms, and beliefs should be within that framework. And I think that's what he has championed throughout his life.
Absolutely. Lastly, where do you think, wherever he is right now, in Africa, there's this belief that we don't die, we're spirits. We move on. We are promoted to the next level. Wherever he is right now, looking down on us as a country, where do you think he would want us to be in as far as, empowering Namibia's women, empowering Namibia's girl child? Where do you, in your view, see us going through his eyes?
The founding father was a man with a vision. He had a vision. And part of that vision has been achieved. And I think wherever he is, he's at peace. He is happy with what we have achieved thus far, even though there's still a lot that we need to achieve. But as a country, since independence, we had never had any major conflicts in the country. We continue to be one of the most stable, peaceful countries on the continent and in the world. And despite some structural challenges that we have, your unemployment and so on, overall, I think we fare well.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy that he has departed at a time when Namibia is ranked #1 in Africa in gender equality, a testament of his